Good morning students. Today we are going to study about respiratory system in human beings. We know that the major respiratory organ is the lungs. Not only lungs, some other parts also help in respiration. Which are they? We are going to study about that. The first part is nostrils. Starting from external nostrils. The next part is nasal cavity. Then internal nostrils. Then trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, and the last part, which is alveoli. So these are the parts associated with respiration. Once again I will repeat: external nostrils, nasal cavity, internal nostrils, trachea, bronchi, bronchioles and alveoli. So these are the parts which are involved in respiration. Now we are going to explain each part. The first one, external nostrils, nasal cavity and internal nostrils together. External nostrils, our nose. We are taking in air through our nose, right? It enters into the nasal passage or the nasal cavity. Now there is some special feature for nasal cavity. What is that? It has fine hairs. We know that. Fine hairs are there inside our nose. They are called as cilia. Now what is the function of these fine hairs? They help in preventing the dust particles entering into the lungs, right? So, if our lungs is filled with the dust particles and all, what will happen? It may result in infections, right? So, the thin hair-like structures called as cilia present inside our nasal cavity helps in what? Helps in preventing dust particles entering into our lungs. One more thing is there inside our nasal cavity called as mucus. What is mucus? Mucus contains specialized enzyme and antimicrobial agent. So they prevent pathogens entering into our lungs. Okay. Once again, nasal cavity is covered with fine hair-like structures called cilia that prevent dust particles, as well as mucus that helps in preventing pathogens entering the body, lungs. Okay, so mucus contain a particular enzyme. They are called as lysozymes. Lysozymes and antimicrobial agents. Okay, antimicrobial agents. Coming to the next part. So from the nasal cavity there is a small structure called as pharynx. And this pharynx, what is its function? Pharynx is acting as a tube, a small tube-like structure for the passage of air as well as food. Okay. So it opens directly into next part, which is called as trachea. Trachea is otherwise known as windpipe. Okay, trachea or the windpipe through which air enters to the next part, which is called as a bronchi. That is, trachea enters into the lung portion, and this trachea divides into two. So I am going to draw that. It divides into two and enters into the lungs. So this way it is branching. See, this is trachea, our windpipe, which is made up of cartilaginous rings. C-shaped cartilaginous rings. It's made up of cartilage. And it branches. So this part it enters into our lungs. Like this. And this part is known as bronchi. Now bronchi divides again into finer branches. Again into finer branches it will divide. and these finer branches are called as bronchioles. And this bronchioles forms at the end. There is a bunch of small grape-like structures or balloon-like structures at the end of these bronchioles. They are called as alveoli. It is the site of gaseous exchange. Alveoli, which is the site of gaseous exchange. Here, the exchange of oxygen, carbon dioxide takes place. So, alveoli is supplied with numerous blood capillaries. Okay, so which is the site of gaseous exchange? It is alveoli. These are the parts which are involved in respiration in human beings. So, when the trachea, made up of cartilaginous rings, divides and form bronchi, and again in the finer branches bronchioles, it ends up with alveoli. So, this takes place in the lungs. Both sides lungs are there. And one more point you have to study is lungs covered with a membrane, which is called as pleura. The covering of lungs is called as pleura, and that space is pleural sac. Once again I will repeat. So these are the parts associated with respiration, starting from external nostrils, nasal cavity, internal nostrils, trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, alveoli. So air enters through our external nostrils into the nasal passage, which is lined with cilia and mucus that prevents the entry of dust particles as well as pathogens. Again, pharynx is a portion that is present just below the nasal cavity. So what here? The passage of air as well as food takes place. Common passage. Trachea, windpipe through which air enters into our lungs. Again the trachea branches into bronchi. Bronchi again to finer branches, bronchioles, and at the end a bunch of grape-like structures, balloon-like structures where exchange of gases takes place called as alveoli. Now there is a part at the uppermost portion of trachea, okay, a large portion which is called as larynx. Here an enlarged portion is there, it's called as larynx or voice box. Now what is its function? It contains two vocal cords, and the vibration of this vocal cord produces sound. Okay? Larynx or voice box at the uppermost part of trachea. Enlarged portion contains two vocal cords and its vibration produces sound. See, this larynx or voice box in adult males protrudes outside and it's called as Adam's apple. Okay? We can see in some adult males, it's called as Adam's apple. Okay, so starting from external nostrils, nasal cavity, internal nostrils, trachea or windpipe, bronchi, bronchioles and alveoli. Okay, and the lungs is covered with a membrane called as pleura. Site of gaseous exchanges, alveoli. Enlarged portion, larynx or voice box. In males, Adam's apple it is called as. Is this clear? So these are the parts that helps in respiration, which is another important essential diet process. That's all for today's class. Thank you.